So I've been a fan of Kanye basically since I was old enough to pick my own music to listen to. I was listening to Yeezus at 13 years old. I didn't even know what the fuck I was hearing. I remember watching the Life of Pablo premiere concert before I had even ever been to a concert in my life, and I was just so hyped up. In my mind, he's always been the definition of a visionary. He's always had so many different disciplines that he can succeed at, never limited to one thing. And I've always just looked up to him as a creative, productive person. When he started to get into politics and religion a couple years ago, I was immediately following the mainstream opinion, and I even made a video called "The Problem with Jesus is King." I was criticizing his religious stances, and it got over 130,000 views, even though I pretty much strongly disagree with that video now. I talked about how Kanye was a hypocrite for going evangelical, even though he's rich and famous, and I said that he should put his money where his mouth is and give up all of his wealth, which nowadays I think is a really weak opinion. At this point in my life, I think people who earn their wealth have a right to keep it, no matter what they believe in, and you can still make an impact on society even if you have money within your own family. When he started wearing the MAGA hat and then later on doing his own presidential campaign, I still didn't want to condemn him immediately. I didn't want to say he had lost his mind like a lot of people did, because I think that smart people around the world have been doing disagreeable things to prove a point for centuries. And just because the public opinion doesn't agree with something doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong. Society needs people to say disagreeable things in order to shake up the status quo, because the status quo is the opposite of progress, by definition. Unless you believe that we've reached the end of history and we live in a perfect world, society needs people to break up the status quo in order to achieve progress in any way, shape, or form. And in the last week, he started up his politics again with the White Lives Matter t-shirt at the Yeezy fashion show. He's hanging out with Candace Owens, going on Tucker Carlson. Honestly, at first, I thought the t-shirt was funny. I remember back in 2020, Black Lives Matter meant something to a lot of people. It brought black issues and history to the forefront of social discussion. The average American now has a much greater understanding of the oppression faced by black Americans than they ever did in the past. That's a very good thing, and I'm not trying to cast judgment on any person who believes in BLM or supports BLM to this day, but you can demonstrably prove that BLM has become something for big corporations to benefit from. And once that happens to a social movement, it isn't a social movement anymore. I'm not saying BLM is a conspiracy or a scam. What I'm saying is that if a social movement is inoffensive enough to be turned into a slogan to be used in marketing by white-owned, white-managed corporations, it's not a real social movement anymore. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say, and I also think that there are tons of articles written about this by black academics. Okay, so in order to illustrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to read a quote from an article called "Beware the Neoliberal Co-optation of Black Lives Matter." It's written by a professor from Canada named L. Jones. One of the mistakes of the current contemporary left is the bourgeoisie use of racial politics, which is to make anti-racism into an elitist project, whereby some people are telling us we need more black bank executives, as opposed to actually dismantling the capitalist system that gives rise to racism and also screws over the poor white worker as well. And I think Kanye understands this on a deep level, and that's where a lot of his positions come from. What happened in the last 2 years, and this is very well documented, is that BLM's focus went from trying to make structural change and dismantling oppression to a focus on assimilating black people to capitalism and entrepreneurship within the greater white society. That isn't really what black empowerment has looked like for civil rights activists in the past, and it isn't really going to help lift black people up today. Working black people, the average person, aren't getting any help from BLM besides more black faces in their media, which doesn't really spur structural change in society. And I don't think Kanye pointing all of this out is a bad thing. That's why he's been talking about land ownership and property for black people for years now. Owning land has always been the primary way to gain financial freedom in America, so you can acquire assets to pass down to your kids, have somewhere to stay, have something of your own, and be self-sufficient. And it's clear that there needs to be more of an emphasis on that in society. My parents don't own a home, which means that I don't have an inheritance. I don't have that boost to put me ahead in society, being able to stay at their place or receive it from them in the future. That means less stability, less freedom, and more stress in my life than if my family did own land. It means I have to work much harder to give my future kids a stable future and take care of them down the road. And that is the same exact issue that a large amount of black people go through in America. That's where a lot of white privilege comes from. Having assets that can be passed down through a family gives a lot of stability and security and allows people to set themselves up for generations down the line. I don't think it's a bad thing for Kanye to want that for black people in America. Kanye's been making these points in a big way for a long time now, but people have been ignoring it and focusing on the mania that he's going through at the same time. The way that everyone reads it is that he's coming up with crazy ideas because he's manic, but I think it's the opposite. I think he's coming up with ideas that are far more compassionate, progressive, and forward-thinking than anything in mainstream politics. But because so many mainstream ideas around social justice are compromised into what can be palatable for the Democratic Party or corporate media, no one sees the real genius of what he's saying. And because he struggles with depression and mania and ego, the insane possibilities of his progressive ideas are what puts him into that state. Kanye has a lot of passion for his ideas. He always has. And if he's seeing that not only is there a systemic issue in the world, but that we're not even identifying it or working towards a solution, that's going to drive him insane. But ultimately, a lot of what he does say is coming from a good place. Another thing Kanye got a lot of criticism for was his stance on abortion, when he said that there should be a plan A to plan B, talking about giving more assistance to women to incentivize them to not have abortions, which isn't a very Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama opinion, but I don't see what the problem is with that. I think we can all agree that abortion is a necessary evil. It's not like you're going to go have a party after you abort your fetus. It's something that you have a right to do, but are we supposed to be happy about it? His stance on this is compassionate. He talks about wanting to build towards a better, happier future. If more people happily had their children instead of aborting them because of financial reasons, we would all be happier, right? More families, more children. What's the problem? I don't see any issue with that opinion, other than the fact that it doesn't line up exactly with what the American Democratic Party sees as virtuous. But he's not even saying that they're bad. He's just saying that more needs to be done. He isn't a conservative for saying that. That is a progressive idea. But Democrats in America don't ever leave room for this type of discussion.
They were fighting for us to have the right to our opinion, not the right to vote for whoever the white liberals said black people are supposed to vote for.
I think the way that people are ignoring the message of Kanye's politics and only focusing on how he says it is part of a broader issue in our society. It seems like a lot of people don't really care about whether or not real change is being made as long as it feels productive and virtuous. We would ignore and completely pass on an amazing solution to our deep-rooted issues if it didn't look agreeable to the current status quo being pushed by corporate mainstream politics and ideas. It seems like we aren't actually interested in making progress, but making it look like progress is being made. Everyone pushes Black Lives Matter by posting black squares and putting it in their Twitter bio instead of actually going and demonstrably helping black people achieve freedom and ownership with economic gains. In our attempts to humanize other groups with new words and terms in media, everyone forgot to actually help anybody at all. And I think Kanye has a lot of interesting ideas on how to do that, even if he doesn't verbalize it in a way that people want to hear. I think he has an extremely empathetic and emotional vision of what is wrong with our world. If you actually listen to his Tucker Carlson interview, which I know most of you didn't do, at one point he mentions the way that General Motors destroyed mass transit in urban neighborhoods to make money in the car business. And he says, "We are all the orphans of capitalism," which is a very poetic and genuine description of what has happened to American people in the last century, specifically black people. I personally grew up under an interstate highway. I could see it from the back window of our apartment. And I remember as a little kid when I opened the windows to my bedroom, black soot and dirt would collect on the windowsill. And that experience makes me understand what Kanye actually means. All Americans have been and are still being exploited by capitalism. I think we all understand that he's onto something here. It genuinely seems like what bothers Kanye the most is that we live in a broken world with so much suffering, and we have so many tools and resources that can be used to fix it and improve the world's systems, but there are no leaders that are actually willing to do it, because more money is being made from our suffering than there would be without it. And I could sit here and show more quotes of things that Kanye got right all day. And I can say, look, neoliberals online won't give Kanye a platform to say his truth, so he has to go to Fox News. But ultimately, that isn't actually what's going on here. Even if Kanye says that he wants to build a beautiful future for the world, and even if he's compassionate and driven to do that, at the same time, there's a deeper issue going on. I think it looks like this. Kanye has a lot of genuinely good and progressive ideas, but because he's struggling with his mental health, his presentation of those ideas ends up ruining the messaging. Kanye's ideas are not coming from a place of craziness or mania. He is genuinely seeing deep-rooted issues in the world, and he's trying to come up with a solution. I think his passion and drive behind the solutions is what makes him look crazy. I don't think his ideas come from a place of mania. I think he's genuinely seeing deep-rooted issues in the world and he's trying to come up with solutions. I think his passion is what drives him crazy. I know that's probably not a good word to use, but that's how I see it. He's so passionate and so driven to achieve greatness and help solve big issues that his mania builds up and ramps up and stops him from actually planning anything or executing any ideas. And here's the other thing. I don't think Kanye should be canceled for any of this stuff because he's not doing anything wrong. Wearing the White Lives Matter t-shirt is disagreeable to a lot of people for good reason. It is completely understandable why people don't want to see that. But at the same time, if you look at that t-shirt and compare it to the things he's been saying, there's a reason why he's doing it. But at the end of the day, it becomes impossible to defend Kanye when he starts going in with conspiracies. The tweets about Jews, the Black Israelite stuff, talking about how there are always people out to get him, this is where his vision and passion lose and his ego and mania wins. I can't defend that and sit here and say, it's okay, Kanye knows best, because that's ridiculous. I really want to say, fuck Twitter, fuck Instagram for suspending him, but at the same time, it becomes clear that he's struggling to control himself, and that's what's leading to this in the first place. Conspiracies like that are unproductive. It's hateful, it's destructive. And that is made completely apparent by the way that conspiracy theory fucking Nazi fucktards are coming out of the woodworks to support Kanye when they never did before. You can't let your view of politics, history, and culture be dictated by fascistic internet memes. And we all know that that's where he's getting that stuff. This is the type of thing that will ruin Kanye's legacy and make him never be seen the same way again for the rest of his life. Let alone the fact that he's probably influencing other people to feel the same way and introducing people to all these stupid ass ideas. I think Kanye has a lot of really good ideas, and it hurts to see him getting laughed at because he's struggling mentally. At the same time, it also hurts to see him getting used as a pawn by far right-wing people who don't give a shit about anything he says and only care about using him for the social credit of saying, look, black people can be conservative too, while at the same time, the people who actually see eye to eye with Kanye's platform are mad because he doesn't talk the way they want him to talk. I think it's pretty sad that nothing good is going to come of Kanye's very, very real desire to do good. But I think Kanye is raising awareness to things that matter, and he's pointing out a very true and timeless fact. We live in a broken world. Our systems are corrupt to the core, and they mostly serve to make money and power for elites. Popular understandings of progress are, for the most part, a scam. Neoliberalism does not lead to a better future, and I think Kanye does have a true vision of the world. For the most part, he seems to be full of compassion and drive. When you listen to him talk about his politics and his platform, he's full of an incredibly humanistic perspective on social issues. But at the same time, he's too fired up and manic to do anything, and it makes it easier for people to take advantage of him in that way. What society needs is someone who does see the world in the same way as Kanye, but is also able to act on those observations in a meaningful way at the same time without getting distracted by hateful ideas that have nothing to do with the objective at hand. As time goes on, I think it'll become clear that Kanye is a lot more right than people are comfortable admitting. But at the same time, there's a good reason he's not being accepted right now. Even though I think he is correct about a lot of things, it's hard to support someone who is at the same time mostly wrong. I think that's everything I've got. Thank you for watching.